It's becoming harder and harder to have any kind of privacy with tools like this. I mean, it just seems impossible almost.
Yeah, and that's the number one question I get after I show these OSINT techniques. Yep. People are like, how do I hide myself? So step one is knowing how to find it and where to find it. And step two becomes easier on how to kind of undo some of that damage that's there. That's another great question, because a lot of the stuff I do for OSINT is for law enforcement. So if I'm looking something up on a website like this and I say, hey, I found their address here and this is proof, I need law enforcement to recreate that search. And if it's behind a paywall, if they have to pay $5 to get that information, they're not going to pay $5. They're police. So it needs to be publicly available information for someone else to recreate it.
Big shout out to Brilliant for sponsoring this video and supporting my channel. Without their help, I wouldn't be making enough money from AdWords to cover all the expenses there are to run this channel. Now, before we continue, let me quickly share something that's seriously leveled up how my team learns complex topics without needing another textbook or another 3-hour lecture that puts you to sleep. David is my AI and data guy, very intelligent, very clued up about things, but Brilliant is the platform that he uses to get smarter. They have thousands of interactive lessons across math, science, programming, data, and even AI. Now, unlike other platforms, it's hands-on, it's engaging, and it's built by people from places like Stanford, Caltech, and even Google. What I love about Brilliant is that it doesn't just tell you how things work, you actually solve the problems as you go through the courses. It's 6 times more effective than just watching videos, and they also have daily practice features, which is fantastic for those of us who are trying to squeeze in a bit of training between other things that we're doing. So you can squeeze in these daily practice features in 5 minutes between deep dives into networking or security tools. Now, it doesn't matter if you're into cybersecurity, automation, or just want to sharpen your thinking. Try courses like Thinking in Code, or Logic, or How AI Works. You'll build intuition that sticks, not just information that fades after the video ends. And did you know that Brilliant has a mobile app that allows you to solve logic puzzles and Python problems from your phone? To try Brilliant completely free, go to brilliant.org/David Bombal or click on the link in the description. Again, that's brilliant.org/David Bombal. Hey everyone, it's David Bombal back with a very, very special guest. Mishaal, great to have you on the show.
Thanks, David. Pleasure to be here.
So I saw some of your videos with John Hammond, the amazing John Hammond. Fantastic what you've been demoing with regards to OSINT. But I got to say this, man, I saw that you're a CCIE.
Yes, I noticed you are one too, and you got yours in like 2003 or so.
That's right. You've already done the OSINT, right? When did you get yours?
2009. So a little bit after you, but yeah, it's been over 15 years since I got mine, and yeah, it was one of the hardest certifications to get. It was worth it.
Yeah, I mean, CCIE is amazing. Sorry, you were saying?
Yeah, we got a lot in common. You're a network guy. I'm a network guy. So it's an honor to meet another CCIE.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, you've got to tell us a little bit of the story. So just for everyone who's watching, I've put timestamps. Jump to the relevant part of the video. We've got an amazing demo coming up. But just a bit of your background. You worked at Cisco, is that right? You're networking, but you've gone into like cyber. You're a virtual CISO, I believe. You do a whole bunch of stuff. So perhaps you can just give people who don't know you a bit of your background.
Sure. I started off with the typical IT help desk type of stuff. And I was configuring a lot of networks. So I got straight into networks, did my CCNA, CCNP, all the way up to CCIE. And it was fun. I liked networking. I liked how the internet worked. And I was always a hardware person. So as a kid, my dad used to own a computer repair shop. So we used to get all these computer parts. We assembled computers, RAM, hard drive, stuff like that. So I was really good at basic infrastructure of networks. And so I built my own stuff. So that's kind of where I started on the technical side. Worked for Cisco for a while, worked for many Cisco partners, many different VARs, value-added resellers. And during that time, I got to experience and work with a lot of different technologies like virtualization and networking and voice over IP, and a bit of video, pretty much everything the network touches, which is a lot of things. I got to work on it. And eventually I'm like, I'm good at breaking things and building things, which is kind of what hacking is. And I said, you know what? I want to be a hacker. I want to investigate how websites work, how they break, what's behind them, hardware, pretty much everything. And then eventually the human mind, how to break that using social engineering. So I combined all of these things to become different types of hackers that exist out there and created my own company. So that's kind of my history and background on the tech side.
I love it. I mean, you do consulting now, right, in your company, and you create courses and the like. Is that correct?
I do. So I do a lot of OSINT. So my company does OSINT and privacy management, which are two sides of the same coin. If you know how to find someone or something, you also know how to hide it or protect it. So I kind of do that side. And with my entire background of consulting, I do virtual CISO consulting for mid-sized to large-size organizations. So that's kind of my focus. I know that's a lot of things to focus on, but I have a lot of different interests.
When do you sleep, man? That's the question.
Sleep? What is that?
Yeah, exactly right. So, I mean, I think what we need to do, today we're doing OSINT, right? I think we need to get you back for privacy, because when I was researching this, it's just like, okay, you do all the OSINT stuff. So you know how to find information about people. How do I protect myself from people like you? So I think we need to get you back for privacy. But today you're doing a demo. I believe we've got like 3 levels. Is that kind of right?
Yeah, the way I break down OSINT, I've been doing OSINT for a good part of probably 20 years. Ever since I was in high school, I've been looking people up, searching things up. And I found that there's many levels to that. A lot of people say, oh, we've been doing OSINT for years as well. Yeah, that's kind of the basic level of OSINT, where there's Google searches and stuff, or social media intelligence. So that's OSINT as well. But then I take it to the next level, the hacker level of OSINT, where that's more intermediate level OSINT, digging deeper into information, which I'll show you in a bit. And then there's advanced next level OSINT, which involves some level of coding skills, some API knowledge, some knowledge of how things work really well. So, and I break this down in my courses as well, 3 levels of OSINT courses to kind of cover a wider spectrum.
Yeah, just for everyone who's watching, I am not getting any commission. I'm not paid for this. This is just talking to experts like Mishaal. And then you've got a course with John Hammond, right, on just hacking his website. Is that correct? Or
Correct.
A number of courses now?
Yeah, I have 3 OSINT courses, and I have kind of like a prerequisite to that, which is an OpSec for security professionals. So combined, there's like 4 courses that make up the OSINT bundle.
I love that. But enough talking, right? I'm really looking forward to this, because I've seen some of the stuff that you've demoed in the past, and it's amazing. So many people have said, like, you next level hacking, next level OSINT, and it must be because you're a CCIE. That's what I'm going to say.
I would say that's where it started. So networking is a big part of OSINT. And I've seen you interview many other OSINT experts on your show, and everyone's style of OSINT is different. Those who come from law enforcement do a better job at looking at government records, public records. Journalists do OSINT very differently. Programmers tend to focus more on the GitHub side of things. And there's many ways of doing OSINT. My OSINT comes more from my hacking background, knowing a lot about networks. And then also I kind of carve out OSINT into so many different fields. There's network-based OSINT, which is where I started. But then there's people search OSINT, which is where my interest lies and where I primarily work. Then there's, journalistic type of OSINT. There's OSINT within code. There's GeoINT, something I enjoy doing as well, looking at pictures, trying to find out where it was taken. So there's different areas. Today, I'll mostly focus on the people hunting side.
But there's jobs in this, right? I mean, you're doing this professionally, so I'm assuming there's work.
Yeah, absolutely. There's jobs in either being a journalist, being a PI, private investigator, hunting for bad guys, hunting for threat actors or missing persons. If there's not a direct job related to this, there's existing skill sets. Like if you want to be a pen tester, if you're doing OSINT well enough, you'll be a better pen tester. I say I'm a great social engineer when I do phishing attacks for companies, obviously paid gigs, because 50% of the time I spend doing reconnaissance and OSINT on the target, and then my attack comes through, which is much more powerful than if I didn't do research on them. Yeah. So OSINT is a skill that kind of enhances so many other fields.
I love that. You got to show us the demo, man. This is what most people want to see.
Sure. So usually I start off doing my OSINT and research skills on Google or other search engines. So as an example, I always show people a Google search like this. So if you type in Google military intelligence leaks in quotes and file type PDF, only looking for PDFs, and another specific one, 2020. This is, in short, Google Dorking, and I get a bunch of results. I get 1, 2, 3, 4 results. pretty narrow search and pretty narrow results. But if you do the same search on Yandex, you get a lot more results. Yeah, the reason I'm showing a bigger picture is because I can scroll down. There's a lot more results than 4, and then there's like 5 pages. I click on the 5th page, and I get a captcha. I'm not a robot. There we go.
The amount of stuff you're doing, I'm not sure about that, man.
And there's tons and tons of pages. The point here is diversify your searches. This is where you're kind of going from simple Google searches to more advanced. There's DuckDuckGo, there's Yandex, there's Bing searches. There's so many other search platforms out there. Use all of them and use advanced search criteria like this. And that's kind of where I draw the line between the rookies and more advanced. And this is, basically narrowing down my results. Once I get to this, and let's say that was my target. And by the way, David, I'm going to bounce around everywhere because I don't want to dox a certain company, a person, or phone number or whatever. So think of this as one target, but I'm going to actually keep mixing it around
just so that I don't target someone.
Yeah, I appreciate that because the doxing is a big problem, right?
Yeah, and
I've heard there's stories like where you can buy how do you say excrement and get it shipped to people's homes or get someone to throw a brick through there.
Yeah,
there's stories you've got of these, right? So it's like
crime as a service. So and we're going to get to that with websites like this, like FastPeopleSearch.com, and we're going to have to redact a lot of this stuff because if you go to websites like FastPeopleSearch.com, enter in like a phone number. Like I entered a phone number and area code which ends with 8675309. A popular phone number, and I get a bunch of stuff around a few different people. And this is ripe for doxing because I have a current home address, I have past home addresses, I have an age, phone numbers, and relatives. And this is very good for people hunting because I keep this, on one tab window, because if I can't find this person who's my primary target, what about their relatives? Maybe their relative has a Facebook or Instagram profile, and maybe this person is too private not to have one. So there's many pivot points. And now this is where my OSINT kind of spiders out and says, all right, there's a phone number to pivot off of. There's multiple names to pivot off of. There's addresses. And now my OSINT goes into each one of these separately. And very quickly, I start going into rabbit holes, which I have to kind of control myself. So with these, let's go on to one of these pivots, let's say a phone number. And the more unique the thing is, the better your chances are of finding a person. So a phone number is absolutely unique. It's tied to you, one person, one cell phone number. A home address isn't as unique. It could be tied to multiple people. So I usually start with what's unique, and I can go to websites.
My surname doesn't help me. Sorry, go on.
Yes, your surname is pretty unique. So if I find something that's unique, I'll dig into it. Otherwise, I'll broaden my search a little bit more. So there's a lot of phone number people search websites here. But instead of showing you what's common, let me show you something that's not as common. So there are search engines like SyncMe or applications like that, which I call them crowdsourced information. So these are apps that are installed on your phone. And people will actually share their entire contact list with apps like SyncMe or TrueCaller. And so now I'm getting accurate results of a phone number that a person has manually put in. And it's not just some data scraping going on with disinformation. So I would search websites like this and search through and find results that are relevant to my phone number. And in this case, the website often doesn't work very well. So it says you reach your daily limit for searches. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go on the app itself. So let me actually open up an emulator. And this is where I use Android emulators. And the screen here, you can see, I can't really zoom in much, but you see a Android emulator that's loading up. And instead of using burner phones and stuff that's too much of a hassle, this is another more advanced technique that I will install these shady apps on an emulator device. And this is Android Studio, so this is the real Android running. And I'm going to have that same app, SyncMe, that's installed in here. And I'm basically going to go through the same phone number using the SyncMe app. Here it says allow access for notifications and stuff like that. All right, I can be free to allow whatever I want in something like this because it's not my application. And then I can go under the search field here and search for that same phone number. So I'll type that same phone number in here. And as I type it in, I didn't even have to press search, and it shows me Sir Charles is the person that this phone number is related to. And this is probably someone's address book that has saved this as Sir Charles. Now, if I scroll back to my original results here on FastPeopleSearch, I see I got like 19 results here. There's so many different names there. But if I press Control S here and just search for Charles, shouldn't spell it right, Charles. So I get a bunch of, actually I get one person, Charles Doyle, a lot as a relative. Sometimes your search results aren't going to be accurate, but now I found it as a relative. So the more I search through different varieties of tools that are here, I can start creating a union between different things. I'm like, all right, the phone number has this name. The People Search website had something else. Social media gave me something else. And I'm going to start writing these things down. I'm a little haphazard initially in the first 5-10 minutes of my search, but then I start taking notes. I start creating mind maps of stuff like this. Yeah. So one more thing, as I'm doing this, a lot of people must be like, man, you're going fast. You're getting lots of information. How do you kind of manage this stuff? I manage it using stuff like this. So this is a mind map I've created in Obsidian. Obsidian has this feature where you can sort of create different types of mind maps on a canvas. And here you see, my central target is a John Doe. And then I span out into domains, businesses, breaches, government records. So these are all things I have to do. As I found phone numbers, I'm going to put the phone number under the phone number section here. As I find other things, addresses here. So with my mind maps, I usually have all these things for two reasons. I will have all of the little boxes here to remind me what things I need to look for and search for, because maybe I'll miss out on some things. And then also to create connections. So let's say this address I found here was also related to one of their relatives, let's say, Jason Doe. So I'll just create more lines from here to here. And then I'll put a note on those lines. If I see a business address here related to someone, maybe a Jane Doe, I'll create more lines here and say partner in this business or something. So as I create these mind maps, I start seeing lines, connections, and it becomes more and more relevant. And it also allows me not to go into rabbit holes. If I go too deep in somewhere or too far off this boundary, I know, all right, let me focus on other things before I kind of dig deeper. So this is kind of how I keep my sanity.
I was going to ask you, what happens if the website goes down? Because you got some of these tools, right? But what happens if that site goes down?
That is a great question, because I don't rely on tools as much. I rely on techniques, which is if this goes down, fastpeoplesearch.com, well, I can open up cyberbackgroundchecks.com. And then there's like a bunch of others that are available. What I do is I keep a list. So you can see on the left here, I have a list of, let's say, person search websites. What is this? FastPeopleSearch, TruePeopleSearch, Radaris, Advanced Background Check. So I have a lot of these. So this is redundancy. And not only is it for if a site goes down, but also I'm going to check all of them. This is also due diligence. I'm going to check 5 different places for the same phone number or for the same email address and get, maybe 5 different results, or maybe they're all the same results. So you need to have redundancy. You can't rely on one tool per se. And this is why I'm not a big fan of those paid tools where it's one portal, you log in and you get everything in one place. What if your login expires, or what if you can't afford to pay for it, or you get banned or whatever? So I'd never want to rely on one thing. I always like to create multiple avenues of search.
And are they free tools, these ones that you're looking at? Are they paid tools?
Absolutely. I don't think I pay for a single tool, and nor have I ever. And I'm a big proponent on keeping it free. And that's another great question, because a lot of the stuff I do for OSINT is for law enforcement. So if I'm looking something up on a website like this and I say, hey, I found their address here and this is proof, I need law enforcement to recreate that search. And if it's behind a paywall, if they have to pay $5 to get that information, they're not going to pay $5. They're police. So it needs to be publicly available information for someone else to recreate it. And that's why I keep it all free.
I was going to say, I mean, I'm going to blame your CCIE background about having redundancy, right? Because that's drilled into your networking like mad, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
I love that. So, I mean, is there any way that I can get, or the people watching can get, like those kind of bookmarks? Are they part of your course, or how do you share that kind of knowledge?
I shared my bookmarks as part of the course. So as you're going through the course, I provide all these bookmarks for free. I share them anyways if someone asks for a certain tool. The reason I just don't publish them out like that is it's not about the tools, it's how you use the tools. So as I'm training people, I show people when to use a certain tool and why I have redundancies in them, and not to jump ahead of something else. Otherwise, what people do is they're like, oh, I got the tools, I got everything, point and click, and you're done. It doesn't work that way. So half of these tools you may never use. They're for edge cases. And that's what I kind of define and say, hey, don't use this until you use certain other tool. So it's useless if I just give everything out like that without, giving a tutorial on how to use it. And these change. So every time I do a course, these will change every couple of weeks. Some of these websites will fall off and newer ones will come through. And these are my live active tools. I keep updating this and I keep uploading newer versions online.
I think it's that whole thing, right? Give a man a fish and he can eat for one day, but teach him how to fish, he'll feed himself the rest of his life. It's like it's so true in so many disciplines, and I'm really glad to hear that that's the way that you're thinking and teaching. Sorry, I took you on a tangent there.
No, not at all. And that's what OSINT is about. There's a lot of tangents that I go through. As I do my OSINT research, I will jump around a lot. And part of my teaching here is to show people what's available, not just to show them the tools, show them where you can find information. So another tool that I would use I went through phone numbers. Let's say I had an address. I would go to something called Wigle.net. And a lot of people on the wireless side or networking side may be familiar with this website, but I use it for OSINT. So let's say I have an address here in London, UK, and let's randomly just search into some street here. And all these little dots you see on the right are Wi-Fi SSIDs. If I do a query on this current page here, it's going to take a bit to load.
Just want to ask you while we're waiting for this, right? It's free, this tool, right? You just need to register, I think. Is that how it works?
Yeah, you just need to create an account and then it becomes free. Otherwise, the tools are limited.
What kind of Wi-Fi name should I use if I want to stop people like you finding me? Because I get this in all the videos, right? You show Wi-Fi name and then people say, I'm going to dox you because I got your Wi-Fi name or whatever. Is it like you take McDonald's or something like really common, or what would you suggest to let's talk a bit about OpSec at the same time?
Either generic names are good. So what you see in most of them are very generic names, or anything that's not you, that doesn't tie to you. Any name, or it can be unique. So I'm not one of those who say don't be too unique. No, it can be unique, but it shouldn't say David Bombal's Wi-Fi or your kid's name or your wife's name or something that's specific, or your interests like soccer or whatever. No, nothing specific to you, but something generic. And also change it up every couple of years or so that you're kind of deleting history. So I would pivot off of different pieces of seed information, as I call it. My next seed information from my PeopleSearch websites would be an address. So the first thing I would do is go on Google Maps and look at that address. So let's say this was my address somewhere randomly in England, and I would just do a street view and see what is available at that address. So I'm looking for vehicles because that may be associated to my target. I'm looking at yard signs on houses. Maybe there's something written somewhere, and stuff like this comes up. So someone has redacted their home here. Maybe they're privacy conscious like I am. And so here's where my redundancy comes into play. Are there other tools like Street View that I can use to view this house that's unredacted? Maybe they're trying to hide something that's written here, or I just want to see the house, what it looks like. So there's always more than one ways to do this. There's Bing Maps where you can, try your luck. It's not as good as Google's Street View, but you may have luck in Bing Maps. There's Apple Maps, which is available now online. You can do the same thing there. They have their own Street View version. And then there's just a simple Google search of this home, where you can see pictures on maybe Zillow.com or other home-based websites. So that's where I would take the address search. And then I would look at government records for this address. Who owns this? At least in the US, most of the addresses have records associated which anyone can search through on county websites. So I can know the ownership of that. And now that ownership ties to my initial search on, like a people search website. Then I have a hit, and then that goes in my notes. Addresses are extremely important because that's cutting too close to home, literally. And this is what I protect from a privacy perspective. I don't want anyone reaching to this point where they can get to my home address, because as you mentioned, David, in the introduction, there's doxing, there's swatting, where they can call the SWAT team on your house. There's literally a website called shitpost.com where you can order cow poop, horse poop, whatever, and mail it to someone's house anonymously. And there's crime as a service that exists where you can do bricking, throw a brick at someone's house, like hire someone else. Even if that person gets caught, they don't know who paid them. They were paid in Bitcoin or whatever, $100, $50. It becomes so easy to spoil someone's life if you know their home address. So this is pretty dangerous stuff.
What I wanted to ask you is, I found on Google Maps, I don't know if this is what you found, or Street Views, if you just move a little bit down the street, often that the redaction or blur is removed, right? So you just move a little bit down the street and then suddenly there's an image of that house without the blur. You found that as well?
Absolutely. So if I look at this house from maybe the back street or something, it may be less blurred.
Just move down the street a little bit, I found.
Right.
It's like weird. I don't know. I don't know if that's, I just seen that in the UK sometimes.
Yeah, no, it happens everywhere. When I redacted my house and my clients' houses, I make sure it's redacted from every angle. So I redo this stuff, and you just go report a problem and just re-redact it here from a different angle, and just you can actually redact anyone's house with no verification. That happens too. Some people redact the entire street, every single angle. So you can be one of those people as well.
I mean, a question for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
In today's world, I mean, this is why I think we need to get you back for the privacy and the OpSec stuff. It's becoming harder and harder to have any kind of privacy with tools like this. I mean, it just seems impossible almost.
Yeah, and that's the number one question I get after I show these OSINT techniques. Yeah. People are like, how do I hide myself? So yeah, that's step one, is knowing how to find it and where to find it. And step two becomes easier on how to kind of undo some of that damage that's there. But yeah, that's for a completely different show. I can talk hours and hours on the privacy side of things.
Yeah, I think we need that, because it's like, what phone do I use? Well, just basic stuff. So many of us make so many poor choices just because it seems like ease of use trumps privacy, and it's like, how do we solve
and
that?
Since you mentioned it, I'll just a side note. I own OperationPrivacy.com, where I kind of share all my trade secrets on how to make your lives private from every single angle. From people search, everything I'm showing, how to reverse that, and how to have your devices private, your laptops, your phones, your homes, your private infrastructure, pretty much everything. But again, we'll leave that for another discussion. But yeah, moving on, there's other search tools like Spy Dialer and stuff like that. Again, there's so many ways to do something, but I want to get into more advanced techniques, metadata and stuff like that. So there's a famous tool here for Bellingcat's online investigation. And they have a huge list of OSINT tools. And this is a Google Docs, a Google spreadsheet online. And if I try to see who created this spreadsheet, I can't get any information. If this was a Word file, I could just go inside on the properties and see who the author was. In here, I can't see much. This is a publicly shared document. So how do I know who's created this? And think of a scenario where this is some bad actor, some hacker who has posted their instructions online on a Google Sheets. There's actually tools that scrape the API for something like this. So for something like this, there's a tool called Zuladoc. And in Zuladoc, there's a command called Zuladoc. So I've installed this. It's a GitHub tool. It's free. It takes 30 seconds to install. And all you do is have Zuladoc. Probably I'm pronouncing it right, but whatever. Starts with an X. And you just put in the Google Docs full link in here and press enter. And it searches through the document ID, creation date, and boom, it found a name and the name and the email address of the person who's hosting this file. And I know this is correct because it ends in an @bellingcat.com. This information wasn't available through any web-based search, or at least none that I know of. But this is going through the Google APIs, which are extremely in depth, and it's just extracting it from there. So these are the type of things I would use from a command line perspective and go deeper and deeper and deeper into information. And I have a whole bunch of other tools here. For example, if I had an email address, instead of just Google searching stuff, there's another tool called Olihi. It's a French tool, or the creator is French. Guessing that's how you pronounce it. But let's say I put in bob123@gmail.com and hit enter. It's going to go through quite a bunch of different websites and try to fetch for me the websites that this email account exists in. And here you see a list, and I've narrowed it down to only the ones that exist. So I know that Bob123 has an Adobe account, bodybuilding.com account, and a couple of questionable accounts as well. And this stuff is important because I know where else to search. I know I can go on bodybuilding.com and find Bob's profile over there. Or I can potentially blackmail the person and say, hey, there's some questionable websites here that your account exists, and you use your true email address over there. So this is a lot of incriminating stuff. And again, privacy violation right here. But the manual way to do this would have been go to each site and try to create an account, get an error, and say, all right, account already exists. So tools like this help me really quickly figure out where else should I kind of search for this person's profile. And another tool similar to this is Magrit. So let's use your name here, David Bombal.
Oh no.
And let's see how many accounts exist. So this is a username enumeration. It will search hundreds of websites, in fact, 500 in this case. It's kind of like that other website you've seen, which is whatsmyname.app. And that's the web version. So back to your earlier question that what if a tool fails? Well, whatsmyname.app has failed in the past. There was some downtime for upgrade or whatever. Well, this is an alternative, a web-based, command line interface-based tool. So now I see, your username is used on Twitch, on Patreon, and some of these may be legit. Others, you just don't have access to it. So like this one, yep, that's you. That's your Patreon account in 2018. And I can start going through these one by one and figuring out which is you, which isn't you, and more information within each account. So there's obviously your YouTube account, but you have a Udemy account as well. So I get a quick snapshot of 500 different websites, and I'm only getting the hits, those that exist, and it's still searching. And I get a result of quite a number of hits, essentially. And this is a good way of figuring out where have I missed, which accounts do I need to look at, because each one of these will have tidbits of information about you, maybe a date of birth in some of them, an image, something you mention in a description somewhere in one of these sites, something that's way too old and you forgot to take it down. And some may not be you. It's just someone else pretending to be you. This is a great way to do username enumeration.
Yeah, I must say it's amazing how many people impersonate me online. Like a lot of those accounts I can say are not mine because it's, man, the amount of impersonation and scams where people try and impersonate people like me.
Yeah, I actually clicked on a few of these when I was going through this, and I found some of them were really not you. It said someone had created this account in India. The image was not even you. A lot of your fans, I'm sure.
Yep. Happens a lot. I mean, there's a good example of we fortunately knew someone at Facebook who could take it down. There was an example where someone was creating YouTube videos it was a Facebook group where people paid and they were taking videos of mine and videos of other YouTubers and stitching them together and creating so-called cybersecurity videos. And then people were paying for this stuff. Wow. And I mean, it was an absolute nightmare to just try and get it removed.
Yeah, that happens a lot, unfortunately, these days. And platforms are not doing much. And this is a good technique to do sort of a threat assessment or more of a digital assessment. And I do this for clients all the time. I say, this is what your digital footprint looks like. And they're like, oh, this is not me. I'm like, well, this is someone impersonating you. Let's take this down. So perfect use case.
No, that's great. That's great.
And this gets even more advanced once you discover a tool like this that's not a web-based tool. You can look at others. Like there's a tool called Ignorant, and you can put in a phone number here. And if I put in a phone number here, it basically goes through a few websites and tries to register there and brings back an answer, yes or no. So Amazon.com and Instagram have an account with this phone number already created. So this was my target. cool. I know that they have an Amazon and an Instagram account, but not a Snapchat account, or at least not with this phone number specifically. So these tools allow you to kind of make your investigation go much, much faster.
It's just crazy that you can get that information from Amazon as an example, that's just available. It's mad. It's
all through APIs.
Yeah. So in other words, you think you're safe because on the website you think, oh, it's safe. But then if you hack a developer, Pentester, you just go through the API and get all that information. It's crazy how much is available. Yeah.
Eventually those APIs will get blocked and there'll be newer ways to do it, but it's a cat and mouse game always. And for example, Instagram has one, which is pretty surprising. So if I go to Instagram.com/Bombal, for example, that's obviously not you. And they don't have a lot of followers, 2 followers, 3 posts. But let's see what we can get out of this Instagram account. If I go under those 3 little dots and I go under about this account, I just see date joined. Nothing else here. And through the images also, I don't see much. If I click on the images, again, no comments, no likes. Usually I look at the likes and see who's liked it and pivot off of that. All right, 1 comment here, but not much. But there is a tool on GitHub called Toutatis. And this tool, when you install it and put in the username Bombal, and it requires like a token, an authentication token taken from your alias Instagram account. It's kind of like your cookie. Obviously, we're going to redact this or I'll just reset the cookie. And when I press enter, it goes through that Instagram account using the APIs, and it found some additional information. So you can see obfuscated email. It says something starts with an h.fr. So now at least I know this is a French account. The email is a .fr account. And sometimes I usually get a redacted phone number next to this. So it's hit or miss. You get different information at different points. Now, for example, if I scroll up and go to, instead of Bombal, the account Bob, I usually use this as a test. Instagram account Bob. I get a full phone number and I get a full email address. But what is this account? Let's go to Bob and see who this is. Seems like a musician, but I don't see that phone number associated here. Even if I go to about this account, there's no phone number. There's no email address, yet somehow through the API, it scraped this stuff out of it. So these are the next level tools where you need to know this exists. Otherwise, investigators look at this and they're like, all right, this account is a dead end. No, it's not. There's tools like this that exist that can go a little bit deeper through APIs into some of these accounts.
It just seems mad that you could just do that through an API. Man, that's a whole world. And then we're getting AI, just going to make it worse probably.
Oh, yes. And there's a whole bunch of these things. My goal here is just to tell people what exists. There's a bunch of tools like this on GitHub that exists. And there's a lot of other places you can look for stuff. So thinking outside the box again, when I do reconnaissance on people, usually they're connected to organizations. Then I go into sort of like the corporate OSINT side. So look through LLCs, corporations using something like Open Corporate. So that's another area I go into. I also go on the network side of OSINT, which is more of the Whois data, DNS data. So let's say I do a Whois of Batman.com. It shows me, and there's like 100 ways to do Whois. So I'm just showing you the web version to do this so that I can display it. I get IP addresses. Now, each one of these is, again, a pivot point on where this is hosted, what other websites are hosted in the same place. This show's owned by Mark Monitor, a big company here, and DC Comics owns Batman. But if I go to Whoxy.com or Whoxy.com, let me zoom into this. I call it Whoxy at least. If I go to Whoxy.com, it not only shows me the current registrar, which is DC Comics, but if I scroll down, it shows me historical records. In 2016, Warner Brothers owned it, which, if you're a fan of DC or Marvel and stuff, you'll know, DC was owned by Warner Brothers in the past. And then sometime around 2020 or 2018, DC Comics started owning it. So this is good stuff. This is just a fun example, but a lot of times, like in this example as well, I see a Hotmail address here. This is a company, DC Entertainment, but somebody with a Hotmail address owned this, and they own 14 more domains. So if I can click through, I see Superman.com was also owned by the same person, and which kind of makes sense. So this is great, for pivoting off of websites and finding a lot more information about, web presences of individuals. There's also within a website. So if you found your target website, you can go even deeper into something called tags. So if you look at a website like cars.com, if you right click and look at the page source, and I've opened up a new tab in this, in the page source, there's Google Tag Managers or Google Analytics ID. Just search for GTM and you'll see this, so GTM-whatever. Most websites will have this. And there's a website called WebTechSurvey.com/tag. And you put in that tag ID, zoom in a little bit, and you hit search. And you see what websites are using this. So that was cars.com, but you see Cincinnati.com is also using the same Google ad ID, or NYCETrucking.com, and a few others. Only a handful of other websites are using the same thing. Now, as an investigator, we shouldn't jump to conclusions, but this shows me one of two things. Either all these websites have the same owner, that's why they're using the same Google Tag ID, or they're using a common tag ID because they have a common developer, or the agency, they're using the same tag ID, which they shouldn't. Obviously, that defeats the purpose. But it could be one of these two assumptions. But it's a good way to see connections. So that's another thing I would do when I dig deeper into websites, is to dig into the code. And this is where the coding side comes in. If you're an HTML developer and you know a lot of the back-end workings of websites, this pops out and says, yeah, obviously this is something like unique within a web page. And I would go further deeper into the website itself with archive.org or the Wayback Machine and see previous versions of the website. Oftentimes I've seen, a current website looks a certain way, but then years ago, somebody had some PII in there. Somebody had a personal email address on the contact us page, or a phone number that's no longer there. So it kind of gives you a better view into that website. And then I do something called website exploitation, which is another one of my advanced techniques.
I like that. Yep.
Which is, let me give you an example. If you go to O'ReillyAuto.com and select the garage option here, and you can add your vehicle either by VIN or by plate. So let's say there was a hit and run in your area and you saw the plate of the vehicle, but you don't remember what the car was, or somebody gave you the plate. So you put in the plate state. This works for the US, and you put in the word hacker and you press search, and it resolves to a vehicle, a 2007 GMC Sierra, unfortunately, as the hacker plate. So if someone said it was an SUV, but we don't know which one, well, you can't give that to the police. You can, but previously it was thought that only police can look up plates and stuff like that. But no, websites like this do it. And there's a whole bunch of others that do the same thing. And so as an example, I went on Facebook. Let's look at this random person's vehicle here. And this person has a bunch of vehicles, and this is our target, let's say. And scrolling through their vehicle, I see they have a license plate number here, and they have a state here. So this state here, that's Ohio here. So I know that's an Ohio plate because that's kind of my target here. So as an example, now I take this vehicle plate number here and I put it in something like Carvana.com, which provides this API service so that you don't have to enter a lot of details. It'll look up your plate for you. So first, let me select the state. The state was Ohio. And let me put in the plate number here. And as I search through this, it's actually searching through its API, and it found a Hyundai Genesis Coupe, which is what it is. But it also gave me a VIN number. And I can do a lot with a VIN number. Yeah, I can basically do a simple Google search and look through maybe the car was for sale or whatever. But I'll take this VIN number. And since I know this is Ohio, there's a website, and you can Google this for every state. There's a Department of Motor Vehicles, DMV. This one is called Bureau of Motor Vehicles in Ohio, BMV. And under the title search, I can search by VIN number. And I put in the VIN number, click search, and it shows me all the previous titles, inactive, all the way to the active title. So now I at least got a title number, and I can do a title inquiry. And it shows me the lien holder is some credit union. So they've taken it on a lease probably, and that's who technically owns the vehicle. Now, they don't show vehicle ownership as much. It really depends on the state. but at least I got to dig much deeper, and I can give this information to law enforcement. And I don't need to call a cop and say, hey, here's a plate number. What can you get out of it? Sure, they can get a little bit more information. But if I start at a place where I have title and lien holder and data was registered and all that stuff, I'm giving a big head start to law enforcement. And this is the US. Similar stuff I discovered is in the UK as well. Yeah, the UK has API, and it's a .gov website. So it's actually .gov.uk. So the UK government is providing access to this API. And the screen you're seeing here right now is my dashboard of Postman.com. So what I do is I try to figure out through the network tab what's really going on when I put in a query on the web, and see what the headers are, what the post method is, and what I get as a reply. Because you can do a lot of these things on just a web browser, but I can automate it through API queries here. So as an example, this driver database API in the UK asks for, in the body of the request, just the license plate number. So I have an example here. Let's search for a UK plate number to test this method out. So I go UK vehicle search on Google, and I pick this car here, and I find a bunch of plate numbers. So this one, I don't know what this is. We don't have this car in the US, but it looks like a
Vauxhall something. Yeah.
Vauxhall, yeah. So the plate number here is VU69YDE. Let's put that in here. So VU69YDE. And I click send on this post request. And it says forbidden because I don't have my API key in here. Let me change my environment to demo, which does have my API key, which you can't see here. And there we go. I get some reply. Yeah, so it's a Vauxhall. It has some other specs, and it was registered in 2019 of November. And that's about all I get, but I'm much closer now because of this. There are actually other APIs available on the same website where you can put in a VIN number, or you can put in stuff like first name, last name, and click send, and you can get more registration-based details. I haven't gotten all of these to work yet because you have to request an API, it expires and stuff. For the demo, I can't really show you this. Plus, it would be a lot of PII available. But know that this exists.
It's crazy. I mean, it's like, I find it amazing that government organizations give you just like the VIN or like personal data like that. It's madness. I remember interviewing Sam Curry, who hacked Kia cars, and he was like, okay, all I need is the registration, and then I can run an API, get the VIN number, and then I can send some codes. And he was able to unlock doors, start the engine, whatnot, just by a number plate. But I mean, what you've shown you is it's mad that you don't need to even go to the DMV. You just go to some website, you can pull this data and then query it and get all the VIN number stuff. I think he was paying for this, I think, and you've just shown it for free.
Oh yeah, this is all free. You just have to get an API. And I show a list on the left here on all different types of APIs that exist. And I keep growing this list. Like, remember the O'Reilly Auto thing I showed where I was doing it through a website? Well, I could do it through an API request as well. So I can put in a plate number here. This is like a variable. I put the plate number as hacker. I put the state as TN, Tennessee. I can send a request without an API key, and it shows me it's a 1995 Honda Civic. So I can do these things programmatically as well, with or without an API. And there's so many possibilities here. And you raised a good point, like a hacker using this for something else. I'm just showing that this exists. So if there's someone stuck doing a certain problem, hacking, getting remote access, or just getting more information, we can collect all these different pieces of information. And it may not be useful right now in the moment, but as an investigator, my job becomes to create this larger mind map and just plug in all the pieces. They may be useless right now, and you may be saying, what's an API? What's a VIN number, useful right now? But you never know. More information is good. At the end, it'll all make sense.
I was going to say, do you find that I think a lot, like talking about rabbit holes, right? That you get so much information that you get so lost in it, and that's why you have the mind map. I take it, so you try and like keep yourself on track.
Oh yeah, always. When I'm doing investigations, I keep finding info, and I never want to dump that info saying, this is useless. So I need to store it someplace. So I keep a notepad open. I put everything in there, but I also keep that mind map open and say, where in the grand scheme of things does this information fall? And I just put it in there. Eventually, when I'm done with my, 10-hour investigation or 10-day investigation, things start to make sense. And that's how I do the investigation. I cast a wide net and then I kind of narrow down.
You got to what's a voter ID got to do with what we're looking at? Don't tell me it gets more scary.
So it gets scarier because some of the techniques I use are hacker techniques, which come from my web application pen testing days, which is if you have a website like this, so voter information in the US is public record, as long as you know basic stuff. For example, in Florida, you need to know a person's first name, last name, and date of birth. If you know that, you unlock a fourth piece of information, which is their home address. And that home address, by the way, is true because this is a government website. Technically, you can't lie to the government. It's a crime because they do take your driver's license when you're registering to vote. And whatever address is in there, which has to be your home address in at least most of the states. Some you can mask, but most you can't. So I know that if I can unlock whatever's at the end of this website, I'll get a true home address of my target. So government information is great. So let's pick on an example like Dwayne Johnson.
Yeah.
Because he's a public figure, I know his date of birth. So let's put that in here. So before I put that in here, here's how things happen. If I put in something incorrect, the website will say incorrect, try again. And it'll only give me a hit when everything is correct. So what I do is I can automate this. All I need to know is, first name, last name, I know. Let's say I didn't know his date of birth. I could use a software like Burp Suite to automate this form 1,000 times. Instead of using Burp Suite, remember I said always have multiple ways to do the same thing. I found a new software that does the same thing called Caido. It's gaining a lot of ground nowadays. It's free and in some cases it's better. It doesn't have a lot of options. But what I do here is, and I'll just show you a shortcut of what's happening. The moment I hit send, there's a post request that goes through. At the bottom of this post request, you see the website is sending the first name, Dwayne Johnson, and it's sending a date of birth, 5/2, which is the correct month and day. And I don't know the year, so I'm doing 1970. And the last piece I want to iterate through. I want to try multiple years of birth. So what I do here is under the right tab here, I start with 60, so 1960 to 1999. I want to try all the different years, and maybe I'll get one hit. And I click on run, and you see how quick that was.
That's crazy.
It actually went through 40 requests in just a click, not even a second.
Yep.
And it's really fast. And I look at the status and the length. So the length is all the same. It's 21,000 bytes long. And all of them are the same except one. This is 16,000. So that's my odd one out, which is 64. But let me arrange it by length. I see actually two that are the odd ones out, 64 and 72. We know from the Google search 72 is his real date of birth. And if I actually scroll down here to the response, I can actually press Control F and say Dwayne and hit enter. It shows me Dwayne Douglas Johnson. That was one of the results. And I'll show you the actual result in a second. And then the other one was Dwayne Eric Johnson. So apparently there are two Dwayne Johnsons with the same day and month, but different year of birth. So at least I can look at two of them and figure that out. Yeah, so if I scroll back to the voter registry info, now I don't have to guess. I know exactly what to type in here. So Dwayne Johnson, and the date of birth was 5/2/1972, right? 72. And click on I understand, click submit. And now I get his home address, street address, zip code, county name, voter ID. And that's what I was after. It's sort of like a math problem for me. Solve for, Y or whatever. I know A, B, and C. And once I plug those in, I can just iterate through one of them as a variable. And now I get the home address. This works surprisingly well in most voter registry websites. And I would say the way around this for websites is to put a CAPTCHA. If you simply put a CAPTCHA, it's going to stop this technique. It'll just make it a little bit harder for me. I can bypass CAPTCHAs as well, but it would just make it that much more difficult. But that's how I would use hacker tools like Burp Suite or Caido to automate my results and get to where I have to. Instead of trying 1,000 times, I can use stuff like this. And again, the goal of this is to open up your minds and saying, where else can I use this? if this website worked, what about a vehicle lookup website? Or what about some other government records or something else that's open to the public, but they ask way too much information, 5 pieces of information, and I have 4. The 5th one will take me 1,000 attempts. You give up, but not really. In another demo, I showed where you go into hotel rooms and the guest will...
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. That was a good demo. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, this is such a big vulnerability where you go into a hotel and the guest Wi-Fi asks you for your last name and room number, and then it gives you access. It's basically, as network engineers, we know what's going on in the back end. It's a NAC, a network access control. And if that information matches their databases, it allows you network access. Well, I can go through all of the room numbers if I know your name, and there's only a finite number of rooms. I know how many floors there are. I know the schema that they use for the room numbers. The first 2 digits are usually the floor. The other 2 digits are the room number, and I can just iterate through maybe 400, 500 entries in a matter of seconds, and it'll pop up as you're in room number 5062. That's a physical security threat, because what if you're an important person who's visiting as a delegate or something, and your physical security is at risk? Well, someone could not just walk in. I could lurk around the halls, and when the cleaning staff comes in and opens your door, I could just walk in and say, hey, I'm just here to collect my laptop. And I just go in and steal whatever's inside. You're not going to be in the room, and the door is open, and I knew exactly what room to lurk around. So to me, that's a big vulnerability which they don't realize exists.
Didn't you demo with John that you could do this even when you weren't in the hotel, right?
Yes, and that's probably a second tier of vulnerability. Like, why is that access allowed outside of the premises? I think I may still have that. It was at Hilton. Here it is. So I stayed at the Hilton Denver City Center, and I had that URL saved in my browser. And here we go. I mean, this portal should not be accessible outside of that, Wi-Fi connection or that facility, but I can access it anywhere. And again, using my same techniques, I can manipulate the URL to maybe access a different Hilton or any other hotel for that matter, if I just know their URL or URL structure. This is crazy.
I mean, it's madness that's available from anywhere. And then you just literally need someone's surname, and then you can find out what room they're in. Because you use Burp to just go through all the rooms, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So lastly, I'll leave it to, so one more technique I want to show you is around breaches. This is like the superpower of OSINT. And if you have access to breaches, man, you have a lot of data at your fingertips. Where I usually start with is an email address. So let's say I have an email address called bob@gmail.com, and go to HaveIBeenPwned.com, very well-known public website. They seem to have changed their look a bit. But if I click search, 382 breaches, it's a common email, so it's great for testing. But I see all the websites that Bob is part of a breach with. And although I can't see details, but I can see where he's been breached. So if I do a Control F and search for, Park Mobile breach, I do have this data breach stored in my hard drive. I know this person is part of the breach, and I know that this breach has an email address because we entered it here, a license plate, name, password, phone number. All right, let's go to that breach. So this is that breach. So I actually have it saved in my hard drive, and I'm going to do a grep or a rip grep, a faster way of doing grep. And this is the command I would put in, bob@gmail.com, search through the Park Mobile data breach. It's a large CSV file. It's about 5 gigs. And when I press enter, here we go, enter. It took
just like that
split second.
Wow.
So that's how much faster
5 gigs,
it is.
Right?
Yeah, it's a 5 gig file, and it searches. Let's say I didn't have this, let's say bob@gmail. I put a slash in front of it because when I don't, and I just do bob@gmail.com, enter, look how many results I get. It's something bob@gmail.com. So it's giving me all the results that are available. So I kind of narrowed down to that particular one. Let's go back to that one, which is here. And now I see a phone number. I see a hashed password. I don't care about the password, but I actually see a phone number for Bob. So I went from an email address to a phone number because of a data breach. And this data breach has license plate numbers. If I just scroll up a little bit and I look at any other record here, so I see a Tesla here. It says they named their vehicle Tesla. It had a number before it. That's the license plate number, and an email address and a phone number somewhere. So there's a lot of information in this data breach, and I use it to pivot off of known information to something that's unknown to me. And I store these locally because online you don't get everything every time. So another breach that I often use is the AT&T data breach. And let me show you.
That had everyone's social security numbers or something, right?
Yeah. So this is a website by another guy. He owns this Pentester.com. And if I put in a phone number of my target, let's say, beginning few digits, then 867-5309 and press search, it shows me that this phone number was part of the AT&T data breach. And if I scroll down and zoom in, it shows me that person's address that they gave to AT&T, their phone number, and it also shows me their social security number. But this website redacts it. But it does show me it ends in 2 digits here. But it also shows me an email address, a Gmail address that I didn't have. So if I have the data breach, I can get everything and more that's unredacted, which I do. So if I put in this exact same phone number in my command line prompt here, rip grab, and then the phone number here, and then I search through the AT&T data breach. Again, this is probably 3-4 gigs file, and I hit enter, and I get exactly one result, actually 2 results, which are repeat of each other. And I get the phone number that was highlighted, but I also get the email address that was also shown in that web page. What if that web page goes down because of a takedown request or something? Well, I have the raw data breach here. It also shows me that person's social security number. It ended with those 2 digits, which I'm highlighting here. And that's a lot of sensitive data. Hackers can and will definitely misuse a social security number for fraud. I necessarily don't need this from an OSINT perspective. I need everything else. But again, data is at your fingertips through breaches, and this is a gold mine.
And Mishaal, we've got to get you back to do privacy stuff, right? Because it's that old question. Okay, you've shocked us now. Man, how do I protect myself? And we were talking offline. You said that, privacy is better in the UK, even though sometimes it doesn't feel that way. I think if you live in Europe, England, or the UK is slightly different these days. But, your data is more private, but the US sounds like it's free for all in some ways.
It is. And OSINT in every different part of the world is different. In the UK, I would say it's a little bit harder because portals are more centralized by the government. In the US, every state is a government on its own, a different website, different mechanism to access data. In most European countries, it's a central authority that controls everything. In the Middle East, it's even more locked down. People aren't even on social media, or at least they don't share stuff. So SOCMINT or social media intelligence is even harder there. In Asia, different languages, different types of social media exist there. No one's on, maybe Instagram or YouTube, but they're on other local social media. So you need localized resources for every type of OSINT. I specialize in the US side of things because there's so much to do here, and my clients are mostly here. But I'm also pretty good at the Middle East and some parts of Europe, doing this for years. But yeah, privacy is the same then. The flip side of this, depending on where you are, what data you have access to, privacy aspects there will be very different.
I think the problem is, right, if someone's determined and skilled like you, I don't know how much you can actually do, but just for stopping most people, you can do things to protect yourself, right?
Of course, and I do a lot. So knowing where information exists, if I can't opt out of a certain piece of information, if I can't remove it from the internet, I spoil the information. So my policy is every time I'm giving out information at the doctor's office or school or somewhere else, I'll spoil some of the information. I may give my true name because they need it for ID. I may give a phone number that rings to me, but that's not my personal phone number tied to my bank accounts and stuff. It's a Google Voice phone number. But my address is going to be completely nonsense. I recently went to a new clinic. I took my kids there, and they asked a whole bunch of information, including my social security number. There was an iPad type of form. I just clicked next, and nothing was really required. So I'm like, people don't know this. They'll inadvertently put in a lot of private data. And then the lady at the registration was like, we need an email address. I'm like, you don't need any email address. Like, no, we need to send you a copy of your bill. I'm like, I'm paying in cash. You don't need a copy. They're like, all right. Can I get an address at least? I'm like, no, again, why do you need an address? Do you need it to treat me? And they're like, well, technically we don't, but I'm like, all right, 123 Privacy Drive, Hollywood, California. And she looked at me in a mean way. She's like, all right, fine. I'm like, that's not a true address, just so you know. But if you need to fill out a form and it's not clicking next, this is what you fill out. And I do it in public more to show people around me that it's not necessary. You'll still get work done if you don't get them true information, because that whole other argument about, hey, you're going to end up in a data breach, your systems are weak, and I'm going to download a copy of that breach one day and show it in a demo with David Bombal or something about my own information. My own information is out there, and this is how I kind of spoil it or protect it. So it's a multifaceted approach, takedowns, disinformation, not providing it. And it's a hard one, but again, it requires dedicated resources, knowledge on how data is ingested so that you can kind of take it out.
We got to end off with the story of your daughter, right? Because we got to teach the next generation, because I think it's even harder for them. I believe you went to, is it like a restaurant or something, and you gave incorrect information. Could you tell us the story?
Yeah. So that was a drive-through, and we went through a restaurant drive-through, and they asked for a name, and I gave a random name. I still remember. I think I said Ali, because I can't, say John or whatever. I can't pull that off. So I pull off a name that's maybe ethnically closer to mine, and they're like, all right. And as soon as I said that on the speaker, my daughter was like, "That's not your name. You're Mishaal." And as I went through the drive-through, I told her, listen, here's a teaching moment, a lesson. I'm like, why do they need my real name? And she's like, listen, I'm like, once they take my real name, they're going to ask for my address and then a phone number. And maybe the guy at the counter gets pissed off at me. We get into an argument. I don't know what's going to happen. And they note down my plate number, and they know where I live now. And they start harassing me. They show up to my doorstep and they start calling me. I'm like, do you want all of that? I mean, this is pretty dangerous stuff. So just give a fake name. All I want is food. And it's not anything dangerous. It's, lying like this is okay. And she's like, oh, that's fine. And then, days later, I saw her playing, I believe it was Roblox, which I don't like them playing. I actually block it in my DNS every now and then. But I allowed them to play for a while, and I was sitting right next to her, and she had a name up there on Roblox. And I asked her, I'm like, this is not your name. Who are you chatting with, or who are you playing as? She's like, oh, no, this is my name. But remember you said never use your real name? I'm like, wow, this is a true proud dad moment. I'm like, it worked. It works with children. You have to teach them young, teach them at a beginning age on, where to have alias accounts. Where is it okay to lie because there's no other way out of it? And where disinformation is good for you because it'll hurt you when you grow up, the seeds of information that you're planting right now. So I think it's very, very important for us to discuss this with the next generation. Half of us may think we're screwed. Our information is out there, but at least let's not screw our children over this.
I love that. We're going to end off with that. We've got to get you back for privacy. So for everyone who's watching, put in the comments below stuff that you want to see. Mishaal, where can people reach you? What's the best place? Is it LinkedIn? Is it X? Or
my website is Mishaal Khan. Yeah, so just MishaalKhan.com. But again, OSINT me, you'll find me. I'm pretty good at SEO on myself. But at the same time, I'm only active on LinkedIn. If you see any other accounts, so that's likely not me, or that's disinformation. But if you want to get in touch with me, LinkedIn is the best way.
Love it. Thanks so much.
My pleasure.